Alright, in this lesson, the first thing we're going to do is just show you how to sketch something. So let's say I wanted to sketch a sword of some sort for a video game. So we're just going to do that. And I'm having to hold the recording above with my left hand, so please forgive me if it's a little shaky at times. So we'll do this. And then I'll just add a little bit of shading right here, just for fun. Signify the difference between the blade and the actual back of the blade. Then here I'll just add a little detail. Maybe add like a handle of some sort. And then once we have our handle, maybe add a few lines for the handle. And now we have some sort of sword or dagger, and we're going to take this into Blender and chop it up and make a real sword from it. All right, now that we're done with our image, we're going to bring our image into Photopea or Photoshop. So the first thing I want to do is get the image onto your computer. Once you get it onto your computer, you can go ahead and bring it into Photopea. I'll show you how to do that. So the first thing you want to do is open Photopea or Photoshop, either one, create a new document. We're going to want to make a 1080 by 1080, or in a lot of cases, we'll use 512 or 256 instead, because 1080 is kind of large for a texture. But you can also use 1080 by 1080 if you want. It's just better for saving space if you use smaller texture files. So here we can drop in our sword just to show you. We create a square texture, by the way, for a reason inside of Blender, and you'll see that in a second. But you want to make it a square, so 256 by 256, 512 by 512, or 1080 by 1080. Then you'll go to wherever you have your image that you sketched your sword, and you'll drag that in. Now you could do this with anything, like you could texture anything just by doing it on paper and then bringing it in and creating a texture from it. Once we have it inside of Photoshop or Photopea, we're going to edit free transform, and then we're going to rotate it and hold shift to snap, and it'll snap to the 90-degree turn. And then I'm going to scale this into place. So I'm going to scale it to where it's in the center. Just select it, and then I could go edit copy, and then I could just deselect by clicking off of it and hit Control V to paste. So it'll paste a new layer, and now I have this layer right here. Now, if I wanted to be pure white, I can either do this with effects or I can cut it out. But if I add an effect layer here and I go to exposure, I should be able to push the exposure to get the black and whites more crisp, offset as well. And you can push it as far as you need to get what you want out of it. Or you can use the mask tool. So I can mask this right here, select mask down here, and then it'll create a new mask. I don't want to have this selected. I want to have this selected. And I select my brush with black, and now I can mask what I don't want. So I'll zoom in, and here I can just use the mask tool here to keep like the edges to look the way I want them, so I'm not affecting the edges differently. But if you don't care so much, like if you want a different style, you could use effects as well to push it to white so that it's a different effect. But if you want to actually keep your brush strokes, or your pencil strokes in this case, you could go through here and then select all of this. Now another way you could do this is magic wand. You could select everything outside of your pencil strokes, but I like to do it this way because I feel like it gives better results on the line work. And then once you get all the way through this, hopefully I'll do it quicker than not so quick so you can see. We'll just run through it real quick. This is a fun style to do with like pencil work moved to a 3D space because you don't see it that often. And then here you can continue working. If you hold shift when you're using the brush tool, you can make straight lines. So if it's straight lines you're trying to make, you can just jump through the straight lines and then go back to clean up edges. And then I'll scale up the brush and mask off these extra pieces. Same thing here. And then once all this is done, we've effectively created the line work, but now we just need to take this texture and put it into our actual Blender to model it. So we got this, and if I wanted to, again, push the line, or push the shading here again, I could just create an exposure, push it as needed to push out the shading as much as I want. And then if it's also got like a hue to it and you don't want a hue, you could add a hue and saturation and drop the saturation on it to remove any saturation. And that's a good thing to do as well. And don't forget to clipping mask these so they don't affect the base white layer. And then we can also add a curves. If you add a curve here and you push your curves, you can get different effects as well to make the line work stand out even more if you want. That's a fun way to do it as well. Then once you get this, you're going to want to export it to Blender. So the way I like to do it is, in order to make sure I get a crisp dark edge on this outer side of the line work, what I can do is I could change this bottom layer to black and white, and you'll see you might end up with things like this where you get like this weird little edge. That's your masking being off slightly. It's not super big problem, but if you want it to be like perfect, you'd come in here back to your mask and you select your black brush and go through here and make sure you clean it all up. Now you see I'm getting this like white edge wherever I paint the mask. That's because of my effect layers, I believe, above it. Yeah, so if I do this without the effect layers, you'll see I can get like a more pencil style. So if you want to clean this line work up, you can do it in different ways. You can do it with this to get crisper lines. And if you want to get less crisp lines or like pencil lines, you can just not use effect layers. It's all dependent on what you're looking for as an artist. And again, make sure you're on black when you're working in your effect layer or your masking layer. And then I'll just clean up these parts right here, because I want some crispness to the black on the sword, and you'll see what I mean when I get into Blender. So here we can do this, clean that up, clean this up a little bit more, creating a little bit more sharp edges. These were just Scoopy drawing, like just drawing to make it kind of a unique shape or Blender. And then once we've done all that, we could do this with other objects too, like cars or parts or things like that, and you could create textures from images or from drawings. Now that we got this, we'll go ahead and file export PNG, and I'll just say sword texture, save, and then I'll give it the name sword texture. And I'll say save, and now that's in my downloads. So once I've done that, get rid of this stupid thing on my screen. All right, once you have your sword texture done, you can go ahead and put it into your scene. The way we'll do that is we open Blender, we go to Add Mesh Plane. We turn this plane vertical 90 degrees, so we select the transform or the object properties right here, and we go to the transform section, and we rotate it 90 degrees in the x-axis, and it'll pop up vertical like this. Then we can move it up if we want so that it's positioned on 0 at the bottom. And then the next step is to add the texture here. So we'll go down to our material, which is at the bottom, with the object selected. So we make sure this is selected at the bottom, click New. And then with New, it's going to add a new material, but you want to add a texture. So we'll click Base Color, click this dot right here, go over to Image Texture. You'll see this appear. You'll click Open, and you'll go to Downloads or wherever you have your texture, and you'll say Sword Texture, Open. And now you might not see it. If you don't see it, turn it on right here. So you have your standard material, you have your wireframe, you have lighting on the fourth one. So this is texture and lighting. And then you have your regular texture. Now, how do we get this out, or how do we make this fit the shape of this so there's no like bounding part of the plane around it? What we can do is we can actually cut this out using a specific tool. So with this selected, we go to Edit Mode, and we go to our Knife tool right here. And what we'll do is we'll just add a cut by clicking on this. And if you don't see the dots, what you can do is make sure you select in Edit Mode, so Object Mode, Edit Mode, Knife tool, and then you go to the dot right here, or the vertice, and you turn that on, and it'll let you see the vertices right here more, which is good for snapping too. Then you'll just cut down through here, so if you click outside of it, you can cut straight down, but the problem is we kind of curved our knife, so I'm going to cut like mostly through it at times, but I'm not going to perfectly cut through it. Like, I got to kind of match the shape, so I'm making bigger sections. And if it's popping back to, like, trying to pop back to the one you're on, just zoom in using the scroll wheel or control scroll wheel clicked in with moving the mouse. And then you go through here and you click until you get the outer shape that you're looking for. Here, I'm just going to click through up here. And I'm going through fast, but if I wanted to make a really nice weapon here, I would actually take my time and match the shape and then do the steps I'm going to show you slower so that I match the shape perfectly. Oop, if you flip over like that, just make sure you flip back over before you start clicking stuff. And then I'll zoom out, click up here, hold shift to move while doing this. And then here I'll click right there and hit enter to finalize the shape. Now you'll notice it cut through here, creating a triangle. I don't want that triangle. So to get rid of that edge, if it does anything like this, go Edit, Edge, and then use your Move tool to select this edge right here. And we're going to hit Delete on our keyboard. And then we're going to dissolve the edge. Now we have an open face, so it gets rid of that weird triangle we didn't want. Now I'm going to go back to the Knife tool. And I'm just going to click through here, adding edges where I want, along the edge of the knife. And I'm going to match the outer edge here with points. So I'm going to do this, this, and this. And then I'm going to match any point that I made on the outer edge as well, just so that I can match to that when I come back through with edge loops. You'll see it in a minute. Undo if you click in the wrong spot. That's not a big deal. Now we'll just finalize there. And then I'm just going to run it back up this side as well, just to have the back side of the knife done and completed. So I'll click through here, and here I want to match to this. And here we have an extra dot, so I'll go ahead and put this dot there, and then we'll put one there. And then again, I'll match 4 here. And then I'll go back up here, match to this one, and I will match to this one and close it just like the top. Now, in order to make this quadded, what I can do is go in here, make sure I'm on my dots for my vertices, and I'll just click these and close to that one and hit enter. I'm not clicking over here, I'm just clicking through here and hitting enter where I want the edges to be. And then I'd click through here as well. And generally you want the faces to have 4 sides. You don't want the faces to have more than 4 sides because that's hard for the math to calculate for animation or destruction purposes or deforming the object if by chance you wanted to deform the object. So you want to kind of model it where it has 4 faces or 4 sides per face. And you go through just matching that with the cut tool. And if you have an extra one here, you just add it just like that. And then clicking to the dots, which it'll snap to. And if for some reason you forgot these, you can just click through, same thing, enter, finalizing those, hitting enter. Now we're just creating these last little pieces to finalize that. And now we have the shape of the base. So the cool thing here is once you have this, you'll see it looks the same. But if we now take this into edit mode and we go to faces, we can select, don't do it with the knife tool, make sure you're on your move tool or your selection tool. And you can select these faces and hit delete and then delete faces right there. So delete faces. And then that gets rid of all your extra faces around the edge. Now we can take this and not in object mode, but in object mode, we can move this, but it's still like a piece of paper. So what we can do is go back to edit mode, make sure we're in faces, select all of them, and we can go to extrude, and we can extrude it slightly, creating a 3D sword. But now we can actually add more to this by selecting faces here up top, and then with our selection tool, not our extrude tool, we don't want to extrude, so we select our face up top, and then we hold control to select the whole line. And sometimes if you do this, it'll select through, so you want to make sure by orbiting around that you're selecting just what you want. And by selecting this line, I can go to the scale tool and scale this down, creating a sharp edge for a sword. And then on the backside, if I wanted to decrease the size of this as well, I could just decrease the size of this, creating a sword there. And then if I want to round this off, I could do that as well, just by grabbing these two edges on both sides, rounding that off, creating more of a rounded handle rather than a stiff handle. And now we have this section here, so if I wanted to maybe bulk this out more like a hilt or a guard, whatever this is, forget what it's called on a sword. But if I want to make it wider so that it's more like able to block a sword or 3D in appearance, I can manually select these pieces and move them around to create more of a 3D shape. And that's essentially how we begin modeling our sword. And if I want to adjust it a little bit, I can just by holding Alt and being in edge mode, and then I can adjust it how I see fit if I don't like certain parts of the shape. And then that's it. That's pretty much how you can add a texture and then create a 3D model just by effectively putting in the image and then cutting it out from the image and then extruding and manipulating parts to get what you want out of it. And then you just clean up everything like I'm doing as you work around it, and it'll take shape as you bend things into place. And there's also an advanced feature here if you want, and I'll show it to you real quick. But like the back of this sword right here doesn't look like the sides. So if I wanted this to look similar to the sides and not just be like a weird stretched texture, what I could do here is actually quickly UV it and then place a section. And I'll just show you how to do that real quick on one part of it so you can see. But you can also kind of tuck things in where you can to get, it really depends on the result you're looking for. You can kind of tuck things in to get what you want out of it as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be perfect if your game is not meant to be perfect. Like this is small, right? So like if your character was standing here, this is the look of the sword, and or if your animation is, but if you were like hyper super into like close up, you don't want this to be more detailed. But if you're far back, this looks pretty good for mid-range or whatever type of animations. But just to show you, if I wanted to, per se, actually match this onto part of the image, like this section right here, so that it doesn't look distorted, what I could do is select it, go to UV, and I'll go to Smart UV Project, hit Unwrap, and then I'll go to UV Editing section, and you'll see this right here appears. And you can select this section by going to Select All, and then you can move this section wherever you want. So the benefit here is you could scale this down if you wanted. Don't flip it like that unless you want to, but you could scale it down. And then once you scale it down, like let's say I wanted this on this part of the weapon, I would just want to go to here and move it into the space, scaling it to whatever I see fit, and using this information now in this space. So if I can't see it here, I can just move this over and turn on our texture here as well, so I can see it here. Or I could go back to layout and see it right here as well, either one. But if I select these faces and I don't like how distorted they are, I could always choose different areas. So like I could move this, say up here, so I could go select, and then scale this up just a little bit to see better, all, or hit A to select all of the selection. And then here I could adjust it to whatever I want. If I wanted it to be pure black, I could put it out here. If I wanted it to, say, use different parts of information down here, I could do that just by putting it in place and scaling it. But that's another way to also add textures into those gaps that were on the edges of our drawing. Or you could, again, collapse them down just by going into your modeling area and collapsing them down so that they're not there, they're hidden. But generally speaking, you want to make sure everything is edited properly so that it has texture information. And this is just two ways to do it. It really depends on what you're looking for, speed, how fast you want to get it done, etc. But once you get it all good, oh, look at that. I found an issue. So right here, we have an issue. These are the things you want to look for. On both sides of this, I have an edge, but that edge is not showing. So let's see if I can fix this. So here, this edge is there, but it's not here, making it a quad. So this is more than 4 sides. To fix this, what I can do is go back to my Eiffel tool and just select these vertices, hit enter, and then I can select these vertices and hit enter. And that'll fix that 4-sided issue right there. And then I can just go back to edge and continue fixing whatever I see that I need to fix or that I don't like. And yeah, that's how you can create 3D shapes from drawings inside of Blender. Hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, if you want to draw your own style or your own textures and create 3D assets from your drawings, that's how you would do it. I'll catch you later.